All right, so good afternoon. Welcome to the April meeting of the Metro North Railroad Community Council. Randy works with the chair, with Walter Zewin, vice chair, and member Mike Stanton, and we got a couple of people on Zoom. So we don't have a quorum yet, so we can't approve.
We do.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the agenda. In favor? Opposed? Okay, thank you. The minutes were distributed. I'll make a motion to accept them. If anybody has any questions. And second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Aye. No, that's done. Okay. So.
Sure, I'll introduce our guest briefly. Had the pleasure of listening to Brad Levins be on a panel at the Intraday East conference back in December, I guess. And he talked about a lot of initiatives that Metro North is doing that involve AI to improve safety and the rider experience. So I thought it would be a really great opportunity to invite him to the Commuter Council to talk to us about the initiatives that the railroad has going on. And hear more from him and have some opportunity to ask some questions after his presentation. So with that, I'll pass it over to Brad, who's the Executive Director of Strategy and Organizational Resiliency with Metro North, to kick this meeting off. So thanks so much for joining us, Brad.
Yeah, sure. Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the introduction. It's a pleasure to be here. My partner in crime, Chad Scholes, which is also on the screen you see before you. Please let me know, by the way, if it stops sharing. I'll get that back up. But my partner in this is Chad Scholes. He's been and currently the executive director for continuous improvement. You know, he and I are approaching, as we go through this, AI from two different but balanced, I call it a check and balance perspectives. He is the leader in the organization who's responsible for testing and piloting new ideas, new innovations, and for AI and applications across our assets, our right-of-way, and all of the above and in between. My role thus far has been to balance that, I'll call it check and balance, from a risk management, governance, policy alignment, and accountability standpoint. So those things are very important, right? Because what we don't want to have as we go into this in any agency is we don't want to have just a bunch of random ideas thrown all over the system without some sort of a policy and a process and a governance that says, hey, we've thought through these variables and we now feel confident and we accept certain risk and don't accept other risk, and we feel confident that moving to full operational production is the right decision on behalf of the railroad. And that's something from a governance perspective. I'm on a committee led by Jeremy Feigelson that was sponsored by Chairman Jana Lieber. I represent, have been to this point, Metro North and Long Island, kind of making sure that that governance, that risk management, and that accountability is in place for the commuter railroads. So that being said, that's why Chad and I were partnering on this. Chad is unfortunately, he's off this week for the holidays with his children. So I will be covering the slides as we move forward. So let's jump in. So the next slide I'll move to, hopefully I'm still sharing here. And it will not let me progress.
If you click on the right side of the screen, it should let you progress.
There we go. Thank you. Who is that helping me out? I really appreciate you.
Rossi ACT.
Yeah, nice to meet you. You're great today. Thank you so much.
Every day.
So one of the things, Metro North, you can read this, but the key thing is, there's some of these projects that are mentioned here. I'm going to go into some specific examples, and those are the things that you heard, back in December on the panel with InfraDay. But in general, there's an approach that we're taking here at Metro North, and I call it, if you're going to implement new AI capability, I've already mentioned, you'll see in a moment, the governance. Governance is key. What's the process for accountability? In addition to that, you also need to have a strategy. And the strategy that, Mr. Vanashek has sponsored really comes in two parts, two phases. The first phase is how can we use AI to help us with safety, security, and service delivery? That's phase one. So we should be looking at AI, and I'm going to show you some examples of projects that we've already started putting in place under Chad's leadership, to pilot that definitely fall into, safety, security, and service delivery. And then phase two, which is also important, but it's not safety, security, service delivery. Phase two is more of your bigger picture efficiencies, optimizations, predictive maintenance. That's what we all kind of go to initially, right? We want those things because it's better business for the railroad. So we need better business in phase two, but first we need to make sure how are we using AI, limited resources, limited money, limited assets to help us with safety, security, and service delivery. So those are the two phases. Okay. And then obviously Mr. Vanashek is very big on, if you don't know him, you'll get to know him better as the new president here at Metro North. He's very big on AI and new technologies to do all of those things, but also because it's all about innovation and getting the new blood of resources into the agency that are interested in these things that helps with safety, security, service delivery, as well as those better business ideas. So it's all really full circle on technology, innovation, and attracting the next railroader of the future, the next generation of railroaders. And this is where we're heading. So let's jump into a few things. So I mentioned the overview from Mr. Vanashek, the two phases. I across the top, you'll see you've already heard me use words like governance and risk and strategy and accountability. So from a strategy standpoint, that was the previous slide. Told you there's the two phases. From a governance and accountability standpoint, there's a few things we've started to put in place. One is we are absolutely aligned under Jeremy Feigelson's leadership. There's a representative on the committee. There's a subcommittee for AI sponsored by MTA. Every agency has a rep. We are following a few consistent things that you would hope that any agency would follow at this size. There is the New York State policy on information technology and artificial intelligence that's coming out of the New York State Office of Information Technology Services. The latest update was on March 11th, and I've got here the policy number if you're interested, and I can also follow up or get that sent out if you'd like to dig in further. And then on the right side, we've gone a little further from that, right? So we've put in place, not only is there the overall guiding policy and governance, but then there's now through our compliance group with Lamond and his team under MTA, we now have a draft artificial intelligence governance document that will be sent out through the presidents, and there will be accountability to follow this governance policy across each agency from a compliance and regulation standpoint. And you can see at the bottom, I just want to highlight some of the objectives, but ensuring all AI initiatives align with our mission, our priorities, and our vision and values as MTA. You don't want to have some new technology doing something that's completely contradictory to what the MTA stands for. Providing clear guidance and expectations, following the governance, and accountability as we pursue new technologies. So what does all that really mean? Think of this as a log, right? I want to use simple layman's terms, but common sense would tell us that if we're going to follow policy and we have a lot of new ideas coming out, whether it be technology ideas or artificial intelligence ideas that use technology, we need to have a repository somewhere that says, hey, buses is doing this, transit subways is doing this, Metro North is looking at this, Long Island is looking at this, Bridge and Tunnels is looking at this. Are we sharing those ideas? Are we in conflict? What are we learning from the application of these new AI innovations? And do we have a way to make sure that we've gone through the vetting process from a risk management standpoint? So that's what Lamond is trying to put in place with this draft artificial intelligence governance. This is draft. You can see draft on there. It is not final yet. That has to be reviewed by all agency presidents. That's the current review right now. It's active. And then, of course, the chairman will be approving that before it goes live and formal. The last components, and then I'll pause before I go into project specifics, because I know I had a very specific timeline here. And I want to show you some of the cool projects, right? Some of the fun stuff. The last piece on strategy, I've mentioned risk rubrics. We have really put in place and worked to build as behind policy governance documents is, okay, well, how do you tangibly, use and manage risk? And so there's a whole scoring system on impact, likelihood of occurrence, and how we are looking at it from the aspect of PII, customer, making sure our customers information is not shared. We're not using videos and recordings of customer faces, right? Where we can identify individuals uniquely. That's a no-go from the start. So it's more about, in general, does the AI tell us something like, is there a bike? Is it likely a bike on the train? Or was it likely a human being on the train versus a product on the train? The AI helps do that. What we can't do is say, hey, we can see there is a person and all the details around them. The AI is not there to uniquely identify an individual. It's more about types of individuals, or is it an individual versus a bike versus an e-bike versus a bag? Those type of things we want to look into see, can AI help us manage those type of situations better? So the risk compliance and the risk rubric set up through Jeremy Feigelson's group and the work on the committee allows us to look at the impact and security of information to people, to our data, to the strategy of the organization, and all of the above. And I'm happy to go into more in a little bit if you have questions on what's behind that strategic risk rubric. So talked about strategy, 2 phases. We've talked a little bit about policy and governance that's coming out, which keeps us all in order, which is important for a government state agency. And we've talked about a little lower, each project that comes out has to be managed to a risk rubric to make sure that we can give it a thumbs up and we've vetted the right types of Q&A before we go live. So what are some of the, I'll close with a round of a few highlights on what are some of the new projects that we're actually implementing. Here, I should say, let me correct my language. Projects that we are piloting right now to see if they could potentially go into operational production as a full system in the future and capability. So one of the first things, this is the furthest along right now, we have done, as you'll see in yellow highlighted, the risk management framework. We've vetted it, aligned it with the policy that I was mentioning earlier. And we have started to formally move into small pilot application and projects at certain grade crossings. So the idea is that we want to use artificial intelligence in the cameras to quickly highlight and flag if we are seeing a detection through the system that we are, when a grade crossing is down or going up, is an asset, is a entity, is something crossing the parameters too quickly while the crossing gate is still in action. Or worst case is the gate down and is the system flagging that there is something in the actual the crossing and could be impacted by an oncoming train. This allows the AI to get us the information and alert us sooner than maybe what the visual eye could see, right, from an approaching train. Because at that point, as you all know, a train does not stop on the dime, and that's a little too late. So this is one of the examples of one of our priority projects from a safety standpoint. Absolutely a priority.
A question.
Yeah, sure.
So this is obviously taken from a drone, that phone. Where would the equipment be located in a place like that?
Yeah, so this would have to be, Chad would have more details on that, but there's options. There's stationary poles and cameras that are set up that allows us to, easily, have set cameras and set locations, because you want a consistent picture at all times to be able to look at any anomalies. You could, I couldn't say could not, but the preference would be a static camera for this, not a non-static movable drone, because that could add other variations and anomalies that moves away from the status quo.
Thank you.
And I'm sorry, was there another question? It's really hard to hear. My apologies.
There was regarding this example. You said that it will alert us if someone's crossing while it's going down, or it's already down and someone makes an attempt to go across when they shouldn't. When you say alert us, who is us?
Yeah, so we're building, us would be our security and safety offices in a way that, so there's data coming in. So again, this is why we're piloting. That's on the other end. Rutgers is our partner in this. So there would be a active live data dashboard that the AI flags the data and it sends an alert or response to security and safety personnel that are working around the clock, in our operations, safety, and security control centers, to allow us to then say, okay, something is happening that's an anomaly. we now need to alert the train. First, look at the data before we cause a crisis that's unnecessary. And then if the data is verified, alert the train that we've received some sort of alert, the conductor and the engineers, to let them know that the train likely needs to take action. So that's how that.
And let's say if someone crosses when they shouldn't be, and they have managed to get away with it safely, although it was risk. Will that camera or the data that you collect, are you planning on sharing that with like DMV or somebody, an agency that would then potentially give them a ticket?
So that's a great question. I don't have a full response for that yet. But my initial reaction would be that would have to go through our typical governance processes for the sharing of information in any legal or other proceeding, just like we do with any other information. But it wouldn't be just an automatic request. Hey, I know you've got these cameras. We can give you that. It would have to go through the current processes that are in place for all of MTA as far as what can be shared, depending on the type of information you're looking for, and then making sure we're securing the information on other individuals and not giving too much information, but giving the information that's needed for any sort of legal proceeding or a detective or police work that's needed, if that makes sense.
Legislature involved.
Yep.
Thank you.
So I guess the short answer would be we can't just say, yes, we're giving out the information. We would follow the current process for what's allowed to be shared, following legal, current policies and MTA, et cetera. And that's part of the risk rubric. So I appreciate you asking that. It's really, as we think about what type of data is being collected from an AI system, the risk rubric helps us understand if there was an incident that we could use that data, what can we share and not share? And that's what we're figuring out now. That's why none of this is fully operational yet. We're still trying to figure out how all that works. But I will say the risk rubric absolutely has gone to the depth of all these different types of data, qualitative and quantitative, that could be available. And then what are we responsible and accountable to share and not share? Doing the right thing, right? But following law, policy, et cetera. That's a great question, though. I mean, I think we're all struggling with that across the board before any of this goes fully operational for consistent use. And that's part of what Jeremy Feigelson's group and we are trying to accomplish and learning from these pilots.
How long is this pilot for?
This pilot right now, it just went in this spring. Actually, the first phase of the pilot, we should be done by early fall. But I can get back to you on exact schedules. Chad runs the pilots, but I can have him follow back up with the exact schedule. Absolutely.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
So my question is for Brad. Oh, so my question for Brad is, how long would it take for this to become full operational? And got these drivers that decide to drive across the tracks as if they're going on a joyride. If you can give them a ticket, you can revoke confiscate their cars.
Yep.
If you give them a ticket, revoke the cars. There's something else you should get them. But I'll say it later. Something that's more worthy than a ticket.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where so fully operational, once we pilot and we can make sure, as I said, all the risks have been mitigated, the MTA feels comfortable with the data that's being collected. We understand clearly what's available, what we could easily share, what would have to go through other processes to share that data for many of the PII reasons. And then, yeah, I mean, to go fully operational, it's more about getting that governance and policy and risk taken care of. As far as the technology, it's there, right? It's getting the cameras stood up and then the technology is already available. The other side, I would say, at the front end is the governance. The only other thing and I get back to you on how long would it take. So I will follow up with how long and the pilot schedule, ma'am, to your great question. I'll make sure we follow up on that. The other side of the equation is going to be how quickly can we get the data system set up, right? So if all this data is coming in, as I mentioned, it's going to be flagged because the cameras are live at some and then eventually all grade crossings in a phased approach. That would be the goal. Then how are we setting up the the ops center, so to speak, to make sure that data is monitored correctly. What kind of resources does that take? How are we flagging the right things? What kind of dashboards are available? Who has access to those dashboards? That is the back end side that we're also starting to work on. Because the worst thing we could do is put cameras up on our grade crossings, say the cameras, the data is live, things are pinging everywhere, but we don't have the right infrastructure and resources to manage the actual data analytics that are coming in to make those right decisions real time. And that's what we're also working on and with during this pilot phase, if that makes sense.
One last question.
Sure.
How many grade, that's assuming everything goes smoothly and you're able to put the cameras up, how many are you actually trying to install? And I thinking costs, I assume this will be done in phases?
Yes, ma'am, you hit it. I don't have the numbers in front of me, and Peter Ramos on here probably in the back of his head just knows the number of grade crossings. But absolutely a phased approach. One of the things that I know Chad and I spoke about, and with safety, was where have we historically seen trends of high likelihood, either actual incidents or the likelihood of incidents based upon historical data? Those would be the first places that we want to go for phase one. You know, our whole goal, again, as I said, strategic phase one for Metro North for AI is safety and security for the public and for our passengers.
Thank you.
Yes, ma'am. So I know I'm approaching time. I'll go, if it's okay, gentlemen, ladies, I will go to just run through at a high level. I won't, unless there are questions. So that the last one is our #1 pilot right now. I think I'm going the wrong direction. Go back in. Can you all still see my screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Yep.
Perfect. So we just went, this is our #1 priority. The next, these are in pilot concept, so we're not yet truly piloting. It's a concept of a pilot. But next, we're going to go to our forward-facing trespassing detection. Similar, right? Notice we're going again, safety and security first. So now as trains are going down the tracks, right, are we in each line? Same concept with the cameras, but then this time the cameras are on the trains, right? This would be flagging in a similar nature. Hey, we're seeing anomalies. This is not a normal thing that we should be seeing, you know, on the right of way as a train is moving down the tracks. So that would be a similar system of the data comes in, the cameras on the trains are reporting, that's flagged into a control center, and the analysis is quickly done. This allows us to understand until there may be something, right, that a train conductor and engineer may not see, that the technology would be able to alert to that train to help make a decision. The technology doesn't make a decision. That's key on AI as well. AI does not make decisions for a human being. There is always a human in the loop. The AI is just helping us collect data quickly, fast, efficiently to help influence and provide more data, more information for a more optimal decision on behalf of our railroad and for our public. So this is another example of that. Rule 22 compliance. AI could all, I'm going to jump to the next slide on this, what this means. So we've learned and we're hearing that there's an opportunity. Could we save employees' lives? I hate to say that, but yeah, can we mitigate risk or the likelihood of a loss of life by a Metro North employee? Because sometimes we use radios, right? We're calling in, we use protocol and standard procedures for how we do, you know, communications via radio, while we have folks in engineering and safety and others on the right of way on live active tracks. So AI can also help us, called Rule 22 from an FRA perspective. And AI is helping already. We're starting to concept pilot this. It's listening to how, because we record our radio, so it's listening to how our employees speak to one another, and then it's able to give us back feedback on where there were anomalies or confusion, the audio was unclear. Because if the AI is picking up that the audio is unclear, and maybe it's a certain area of the right of way, maybe it's a certain region, maybe it's a certain control point. Well, if that's occurring and the AI is flagging that, perhaps that's how the recipient, right, of the communication is receiving it as well. And perhaps because we don't have as crystal clear communications as possible, are we then increasing the risk of making an incorrect decision while we're working on the right of way? So we're trying to get ahead of what tools can we provide for our employees to ensure that they are using clear, consistent, policy aligned communication And hopefully that could eventually mitigate any loss of life on our right of way. And that's our goal for our employees as well. And then last but not least, I'll stop with this one on train door detection. So this is a big one as well of, are we always aligned? It's cameras as well, this time on station platforms. So we've talked about cameras on grade crossings. We've talked about cameras on trains. And now this is the idea of using cameras and data information on our platforms that tells us, hey, how many times over a certain days or period are we seeing that a train, even if it's slightly off, right? A little bit, off the correct alignment on a platform, we don't want that at all. Our goal is, 100% compliance, because any slight move in any direction, are we then increasing a slight risk? And a slight risk is too much risk. Are we increasing the risk that a passenger has too much of a gap, right? So now this is about the customer safety. So we've talked about our constituents and grade crossing safety. We've talked about our employees' safety, and now we're talking about things that improve our customer safety, making sure we're doing everything we can to always have our trains align on the platforms as best we can, so we mitigate any potential risk of a slip or a trip or a fall or anything to do with a gap that we could have mitigated. So I'm going to pause there. There's other projects I'll send out the deck after this if you would like. There are a few other pilots in place, but I'm watching the clock. I know we started a few minutes after, but you said less than 30 minutes. So I want to be respectful of your time.
There's one who operated subway trains. There's going to be a variance. You can't stop exactly in the same exact spot every single time. You're going to be a couple of inches off, before.
Absolutely.
But the main thing is that the cost stop marker for the train is going to be within the confines of the station. So
Correct.
it doesn't matter if you're a foot off or back.
But our goal, well said, sir. And I guess this is more of, are we seeing extreme anomalies of that, correct?
All right, I'll give you that.
Yeah. So this may not be something, going back to, I forgot the individual, I think one of the ladies asked about cost, right? So that's why we're in concept pilot. To your point, sir, this may not be worth the squeeze from a cost standpoint, right? If we're seeing that we're really not going to get much out of this because there is going to be some variation, but we're looking at extreme variation to mitigate risk and impact to customers, perhaps this is not the priority right now with limited funds and resources. So that's also something we're looking at from a strategic standpoint. Once the risk rubrics come back, there's a cost benefit analysis to all of this as well.
Automatic trains like the air trains, they will stop always at the same point, but when you have humans running it, you have all the variability. Thank you.
So was this helpful? Any other questions?
Yeah, just one question. The concept with the camera on the front of the train, how far out is it you're trying to go out as far as like the image in front of the train and around the train?
Yes, let me pull up I think I have stats on that one.
Not the ones, yeah.
Yeah.
He's talking about.
You talking about the train door detection?
No.
No, the
No, the one
face-
prior.
The trespassing
The one
detection.
Oh, the trespassing. I'm sorry, the grade crossing.
Yeah,
Gotcha.
that's on the tracks, and you need to notify someone like how far out in distance.
Sure. Yeah, I don't know if I have the exact schematics in my notes here, but I can get back to you on that as well.
That's fine.
Yeah. I took a note. So I owe you on timing of, so I'll send the deck out. I think I owe timing of the pilots, where we are with the policy getting signed. I can talk to Jeremy on that. And then I'll also get you some of the details on your questions on the actual parameters for the grade crossing. Does that seem fair?
Yes.
Okay.
Brad,
Can do.
just one other quick question. Are there dumb systems, non-AI systems that do any of this already? Or is any of this replacing upgrading what you have in place?
For us, not right now. For the grade crossings, no. We have piloted other on the train. So that was the second one I showed you. There have been some other pilots in the past on the right of way as the trains are moving live down the tracks. But no, we are not trying to, the goal is, right, we're not duplicating anything that currently exists. And that's part of the cost benefit. It could be a replacement as we move into other projects, and you'll see those in the deck. The presentation that I'll send out afterwards. There could be something similar in place on the ones I didn't get to yet. But the idea would be not to duplicate and replicate, is to make sure we're making an optimal decision for safe, secure service delivery. So we're looking at options to see, do we replace something? Do we keep something? Do we start something new? What's the best thing for safety, security, and what's the best thing from a cost aspect? So all those things are on the table.
Thank you very much.
Thanks
Sure,
so much, Brad. Much appreciated.
of course. Thank you for your time. And I guess I'll just email you directly with the follow-up. Okay.
Yeah, that's fine. We can distribute it to everyone.
Okay. Well, hey, everyone, for those that celebrate a great holiday, and we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
You're up, Randy.
All right, so, that's all I have this year. All right. So 31st of last month, Kathy Bernoli retired as the Metro North president, first female president. She was number 6, I think, yeah, 7, yeah, 6, and Justin was number 7. And I attended her retirement party, which was down in the Oyster Bar. It was very well attended. It was very, very nice. My first time ever eating in that. It was a very nice dinner, and people spoke very well. Metro North, of course, had another phenomenal month during February when the on-time performance was 91.5. And you never could dream about those kind of numbers many, many years ago, but now Metro North is doing it. And ridership is up. An average of 220,000 daily riders. There were new timetables went into effect on the 30th of March, and they've added some express trains with limited stops, mostly on the New Haven line, but also one on the Hudson. And they just actually came out with a press release yesterday that caused the Breakneck Ridge Station is closing for 2 years for construction involved in the Fiora Trail. They're going to add more stops to trains, more trains stopping there this weekend. Because people just want to go and get one last opportunity to enjoy it. So then, because they'll have a hunger for 2 years about it. Open house with this next Wednesday. I wasn't going to be able to make it, but things change, and I plan to be there. We'll be at the Hastings on Hudson Library. Walt, you said you were.
Yeah, I'm planning to go to it.
Yeah. So I'm going to go to that myself. That's within walking distance of the station. I don't know. The Talenton and take another look at it. And at the February board meeting, the board approved the purchase of 13 battery and electric powered locomotives, the first of their kind in North America. And delivery is expected to begin in early 2029. The zero emissions locomotives are designed particularly for Penn Station service and are expected to serve the New Haven line after the launch of the Penn Access, and they'll be able to use them in non-electrified yards and the 2 branches of the New Haven line, Waterbury and Danbury, which are diesel branches. And I mentioned about the Breakneck Ridge Station, so that's my report. Okay, so now we have.
Yep. Yeah, it's been a busy couple of months since MNRCC last met. We've had a number of major issue areas that we've been focused on, but particularly the 25 to 29 capital plan, ensuring that there's full funding for that. In Albany, we've helped organize a number of rallies on that initiative, both here in the city and up in Albany as well, and met with a number of legislators about the need for the plan and following up from our report that we put out in February, which detailed a couple dozen potential funding options for the plan, just to ensure that, it's a big number of funding that's needed for the plan, but there's a lot of different options that legislators have to fill. Yeah, it's a $68.4 billion plan in total, of which around half of it is has like funding identified. And then, we're trying to fill approximately a $35.4 billion hole in the current budget.
It sounds scary when you say that loud.
Yeah. But it's we're looking for recurring funding streams that can be bonded over a long period of time, so the actual need is not nearly as much.
But a significant part of the funding identified is assuming continuation of current trends in federal funding, right?
Exactly, yeah, which is around,
Billion in federal
but
funding?
it's federal 14, yeah, 14 billion, so close to 3 billion a year.
No, over 5.
That's over the 5 years. Not quite 3 billion a year. So, that's definitely up in the air with all the back and forth between the state and US DOT. Although there's nothing definite really to report on that. We've been continuing to push op-eds and social media posts and other things to support the capital plan. I think, from talking to anyone and everyone about it, no one knows exactly when the budget's going to be finalized. But it doesn't sound, thankfully, like MTA funding is the main holdup. There's a number of other outstanding issues that have been keeping it past its deadline, which was April 1st. We've been continuing to work on congestion pricing after the launch, which was 100 days this past Tuesday. News count, yeah. There's been a lot of great data, both released by the MTA and other sources, about how everything from traffic speeds to street safety to business in and around the central business district has been going, and I think by and large everything's been really positive. So we've been continuing to get that messaging out there as much as we can, in any way, shape, or form we're able. I think as the MTA has been raising the expected revenue of $500 million a year for the program, we'll start to see some of the transit benefits come into play sooner than later, which is great. But the program is far from out of the woods legally. The feds have given the state the deadline of Easter Sunday to turn off the program, so we will see what happens.
I thought they had agreed to postpone that till the fall.
Yeah.
They want, in their scheduling conference with Judge Lyman, yes, they agreed to a schedule that would take them through midsummer to do the formal process, and then there would likely be follow-up into the fall. And then the next day, Secretary Duffy was on Twitter saying we're still holding them to the deadline of Easter Sunday, and we're examining all options of how to retaliate against the MTA if they decide to go past that deadline, including withholding, federal transit funding from New York State. So they haven't filed an emergency injunction yet. They said that they weren't, their attorney said that they were not planning on it, but who knows?
Don't believe it.
Who knows, yeah, exactly what will happen. So that's still TBD. We've also been working hard on promoting our fleet of fare incentives, the Rider First Fare agenda in Albany. It was thankfully included in the Senate One House budget last month and referenced in the Assembly One House as well. So fingers crossed that it might make it into the final budget whenever that is decided. We've also put together standalone bills for the various policies, and we'll push those forward if they end up not being in the budget this year. So giving ourselves some options there. And additionally, we also have the Rider Rep Act, which we introduced first last year and got over 50 co-sponsors, and we'll continue to work on that legislation, as well as some other reforms for PCAC more generally during the legislative season for the month and a half or two that it happens after they get the budget done. So it's gonna be a quick and hairy time in Albany between the budget being finalized and the end of the session. Jack, anything to add on?
No, you covered it. Did you mention the group memo support?
No, I didn't,
We've
yeah,
been putting together a list for all the bills and it's a good list. We got the Business Council yesterday of New York State, which is good. The League. Reinvent Albany, it's like strange bedfellows, but that's what you want, you know, good spread. And the Westchester County Association just emailed and said them, signed them too, so. And the New York State Restaurant Association. Right. There's a long list. Yeah.
I emailed Lisa yesterday and haven't heard back yet.
I sent her something.
The Queen's Chamber signed on.
Oh, it should be something to tell.
Brooklyn Chamber said no, which is sad, but that's okay.
All right.
I'm sorry.
Social,
On the record
Yeah,
now.
that was, I didn't see that, either, social.
social media update?
Yes. I'm covering this month. So first of all, some New Haven line trains, have been shortened, a few cars were taken away and, some riders have on social media requested for some of those cars to be reinstated on peak trains specifically because there have been a lot of standing room only trains. This has been an ongoing issue every month that we do this, update.
Is it a cost shortage because of mechanical problems or?
It was, the cars were, I think, taken similar to on the Long Island Railroad, they sort of like rearranged or shuffled around some train cars, I think because of overcrowding on other branches, but then, of course, shifting the train cars around, causes issues on other lines. But there have just been ongoing reports on social media across all lines on peak trains of overcrowding, standing room only, and a few reports of people fighting over seats, which there's no one wants that. And specifically the middle seats as well. Next, a few riders were disappointed that the first two Yankee games of the season did not have direct train service on the Harlem line, but the railroad shared that they could not provide that service for daytime games because it would interfere with the PM rush service.
Right.
People were more understanding of that. And lastly, there have been some questions about trains newly being listed as held on the train time app rather than delayed or canceled, and the railroad responded that this means that the train is temporarily stopped when, for example, a train will cross in front of the current train or things like EMS access, more temporary things, but they may not be officially delayed. So it seems like a new communication system that they're using. But generally, few delays have happened, but there's been good communication between the railroad and riders.
Okay, very good, thank you.
Have we seen anything about disruptions inside Grand Central due to protest activity? There seems to have been.
Yeah,
uptick in the
I-
last
getting
few weeks.
Twitter was live.
They are
Closed all the entrances and people couldn't get in and out, trying to get to work in the morning. It was
So I did not see any specific things targeted at the railroad. I think that people are aware that that isn't really the railroad's.
I got a couple of words that that this was gonna happen.
Yeah, it's been coming up in the train
Yeah.
time app, but it's
Yeah, I think that people are
a broader question.
understanding that it's not the railroad's fault, so we haven't actually seen anything about it necessarily, but, I think people want to be able to make their trains as long as they're not blocking people.
All right, old business. Thank you. All right, new business. We should talk, it's like thinking about 4 months from now, April time, where do we want to go?
It's so far from now, Randy.
Oh, no, it doesn't happen, every advanced time.
Best time of the year.
I'm sorry?
It's the best time of the year.
That's
For August, right? The-
August.
Okay.
We've been to High Bridge, and we've been to the Harlem, we have been to
Awesome.
The TOT.
Awesome.
Yeah, Harrison TOT, and we've been upstairs to the RTC and when we were in Grand Central Madison before it was open, which
I
was.
know, we got two
very
tours
great.
before and after.
Yeah, so we've done that, but
We can check out the
we're
fjord.
in the Brewster now, right, that was on my, near the Brewster or North White Plains. You know, the problem with it is that it takes a long time to get there.
So where's the Brewster?
You know, to the southeast, actually,
Oh.
it's the southeast. Got it renamed many years ago, so southeast of North White Plains, which is a better place. They're both on the Harlem line, so.
Those are good places in Connecticut, but we don't go there, I guess.
We could,
Bridgeport, New Haven, Stamford, very busy places and a lot of facilities there.
I wonder if any of the the new stations in the Bronx on the New Haven line for Penn Station access would be. I know someone floated this idea a while ago, of maybe doing a tour of how construction.
you know
is
what, I
going.
know,
Let's do that.
I know, so we. We call her.
Sounds cool.
I know they've been doing some tours. I feel like I've heard of some of those tours though.
Maybe, yeah.
That would be a good
I
idea.
joined their meeting one, but I haven't had the emails.
There's the community, we've gotten presentations from the community outreach people who do pen access.
Yep.
Joe O'Donnell.
Cool.
What's the name?
So, yeah, so let's, I'll look at that.
We have a date set in August.
Whatever day the
Well, it's
the meeting is.
it's just like a placeholder, but it has to move a day or so.
Yeah. We have some time to officially schedule that, but that's a good.
That's still be like the 14th.
That's it.
Oh, no, I had it down for the 12th of August, but it could be the 14th.
Right, no, I feel like every day that week you might have had
Tuesday.
something, I think you said you had something.
Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
there
that,
is
that got changed. Yeah, so we go back to the 14th. Change it back to the 14th.
Yeah.
Done. Okay, 14th it is, yeah. We decide not to go on that trip. I still back to the 14th.
So look at the construction, on the line from New Rochelle down to Harold Interlocking, I guess it is. That would be, unless they run a train for us,
No, we could go to
I
the
mean, you
site.
can drive around it, I guess, in a bus or something, or a van, look at the sites. I don't know how
We'll
it's-
find out if
One or
it's-
two stations. I know they're doing the stations in different orders, so there might be like a particular station that's a little bit farther along. I know the one near, I think it's Montefiore Hospital. I know that there's a whole thing that they're doing around the station, some kind of a rezoning and something about the workforce.
I'll
for
give
the
her a
hospital,
call
but,
and I'll,
yeah,
and then
we
I'll turn it over to you.
Yeah.
One broad MTA, but does the MTA publish any dashboards on cleanliness? You know, we've talked about it in past meetings. I feel that it's perception, but it feels like when they changed the train cleaning policy during the drought, that there's been a significant increase in bill.
On the outside or the inside?
Both.
Both.
And so I don't know if we've gone back, I'm sorry,
The real cost?
this is more on the subway. This
Oh,
is
the
more-
subway.
It's more on the subway, but it really does feel noticeable, and I'm just curious if the MTA is tracking and reporting on it.
This has come up in TRC
Yeah.
quite
Oh,
frequently.
really?
Yeah, the cleaning schedules, also the stations, so the MTA has a whole metrics portal. I don't believe that cleanliness is, or cleaning is one of the metrics that they publicly track. I hope that they have a schedule of cleaning behind the scenes, and it definitely did decrease, and they didn't ever announce that it was reinstated, I believe. So we can look into that. I think we're trying to get a future presentation at an upcoming TRC meeting about cleanliness, and I think focusing on stations, but I think that the two are connected. But we can check in about that.
That's just. Yeah.
Right, before you close out, Randy. All business for me, 125th Station. I stated, the bathrooms were constantly inactive. Ironically, this is where I was illegally charged for trespassing years ago. And also stated at a previous Metro Committee meeting, I stated, I got learned that the station would close at 11 p.m. when trains are still stopping there, well, after 11:59 p.m. There's no excuse for that. Okay, that's my old business issue. New business issue. New Haven. State Street. Union Avenue. More trains. State Street, limited service. What was the point of opening State Street Station with limited service? I've stated regarding the New Haven line itself, it should be extended to Boston, Hartford, Springfield. The possibility should extend to those points and put Scamtrak out of business. Regarding the Hudson line, I stated extended to Albany, Buffalo, etc. Again, put Scamtrak out of business. Because everyone knows is a scam. So
The state street thing is, we have nothing to do with that, that's their service. They decide what they want to do.
okay, but regarding 125th Station, someone needs to investigate.
Thank you. All
Just
right.
one other, just sure, one other question that's raised to the group. First, can we get a written list of just all of the Metro North Committee and PCAC kind of outstanding asks? You know, we get that and I appreciate, you know, the right of first fair incentives, all the stuff we talk about on a monthly basis. We just got a dashboard showing where that stands. And then related to that, my question is, and I pose this to the other members of the committee, it feels like most of our asks over the last year have evolved to asks to the legislature. I don't feel like we're asking a lot of the MTA. And I think we should be. Not least of which is returning the quiet cars, is my personal opinion. Paper timetables we talk about that, but you know, in the past, we've had more asks to the MTA, and I don't think we have any open ones right now.
Especially with the new president, that might be. an
Right, so I just put it on the table
opportunity
for the committee, maybe in our next meeting, we put that on the agenda to talk about.
And
So Randy, regarding the paper schedules, which I mentioned, are they returning?
no,
So
I have a question.
Yeah.
Purchase of the 13 battery electric locomotives. Are those third rail locomotives or overhead power, overhead AC power?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure they are.
So they can run on, they can run down into Penn Station on that, on the Amtrak.
yeah, this is section of Howard, in Harold where there's the,
Right, okay.
is where the power changes over.
Right.
But the 60 cycle to 120. Okay, so I think we got everything. Motion to adjourn.
Well, sorry, could I ask a question? I don't know if this, something I've been thinking about, it's kind of I don't know if this falls under a purview, but I wanted to just ask about is, I've taken the New Haven Super Express, they call it, which is like a total delight. It's so quick, you're in New Haven before you know it, there's like no stops. It's faster than the Acela, apparently, which is. The problem is when you get to New Haven, so I go up there because my grandma lives a few stops east on Shoreline East, but there's nothing in Connecticut. There's no Shoreline East service that connects to.
So you gotta wait.
Yeah, well, it's basically I have to Uber because the only other option is to take a bus that's an hour and a half versus a 20-minute train ride, or to wait literally sometimes 2 hours. Like even the PM peak service it's horrible. So is there? I mean, I feel like, you know, we're obviously New York State focused, but I mean, I would think that would limit the ridership of this great new service that Metro North is doing. It's like, could we send a letter? Is there anything you can do about it?
People take short lines.
What?
You're assuming people take short.
Well, they don't because it's not frequent. There's like 5 trips a day. But
Yeah, they could hail the service on Shoreline East some time ago.
And also the Friday service on Metro North.
at the very
Is this
least, they
service
should offer
New
connecting.
Haven service, is it weekdays or is it 7 days a week?
The Shoreline East service.
No, you're.
No,
correct.
no,
That's
New
the
Haven,
Express,
it's
the
Super
Express,
Express.
Oh, no, that only runs during the week.
Yeah,
That's-
it leaves at like 4.
You would think that would be a big commuter train, so it would be
Wow.
like people on Shoreline East could theoretically commute from the city or to and from the city.
Yeah,
If
yeah.
that lined up.
Yeah.
Weird.
Yeah, it doesn't line up. So
Call
it's
for
fine.
it, it should.
Can we?
I
Can we do
think
something?
I think if it lined up.
Shoreline
Right.
East, they,
Oh, the
the
guy who
service.
was
Do a letter to.
I didn't get a chance to speak to him,
DTP.
but the guy, the transportation commissioner was.
I think
at,
if it lined up.
They have to be contacts,
Yeah, right.
Andy must know who you guys can speak to about this.
Yeah, Angie, could we speak to someone? I know I've brought this up to you before.
With respect to Shoreline East connections,
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, let's follow up. It's a little hard to hear. I've been on the train from New Haven, actually, but happy to have a follow-up conversation.
I'll email you.
All right, anything else? All right, motion to adjourn, get a second, all in favor? Thank you, thank you all for coming in and sharing your time with us, thank you, thank you.
Thank you.
I'm
Hi, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.
gonna go with you.